when I was making this, I decided that I was going to find a wood that's not common. This wood it's called a shadea wood. This wood is really, really, really hard. I burned up 2 saw blades making that. Well, actually, a saw blade making it, and I had to only make 2 cuts. And I broke a drill bit and 2 screws putting it together. And it's extremely hard wood. I never stained it or nothing. I simply wiped it down with oil after I was done. And while I was making it, there was not a lot of feeling behind it. And I'm thinking, all of a sudden, I started getting this feeling to want to weep. And then I got to thinking, well, this is the device that took our Savior out. This is the device that the Romans used for your sin and my sin. They pinned him to this thing. I'm using it for a backdrop as a reminder. For when you're feeling down, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling no good, remember there's a man that died on that for you. As I was carrying it up the step, I drove a splinter into my finger, very deep splinter. And I almost let out a roar. Wasn't quite a roar. But then I gripped myself and I thought, what a selfish young man I am. Because our Savior was pinned to it with spikes. And what was one little splinter going to hurt me? It was easily removed. It would never leave a scar. There's no blood on it. The blood didn't run down that tree. But the one that he hung on, it ran down the tree. So as I hung this and I purchased this sword when we were out of town. This is Solomon's sword. Solomon's sword. The sword don't represent a whole lot, but it's Solomon's sword. Solomon was the one that built the temple, restructured the temple in Israel. And the glory fell in there. Solomon was David's son. I think, my personal belief is David was a warrior. David was a fighter. David was a man of valor. David was a man that killed and I could just see David sitting on the hill after his family and all of his troops families were all taken away. I could see him sitting up on the hill shaking when he followed him, when the Lord said, yes, go get your families back. The Lord gave him the permission, go get your families back. He was getting ready to be stoned by his own men. He was such a fighter. He had blood on his hands. I don't think the Lord wanted David to build the temple. But it had to come from I believe it had to come from David's lineage, so that's why Solomon got to build the temple. Solomon wasn't quite as ruthless as David. But David still had a heart for God, but that ain't what God wanted in the temple. And God, once Solomon built the temple, the glory fell so heavy in the temple that the priests couldn't preach. That's what I want here. I want the glory to fall so hard in here that we can't see each other, that we end up on the floor weeping and crying.